What is up, crazy fam? Guys, listen up. Today, I'm super excited to go in depth about this build that I'm going to be bringing into the day one raid. This build has easily become my favorite PvE build. It's a Strand setup, and overall, it's not just going to be amazing for the day one raid, but pretty much any kind of endgame content you're going to be playing, this is going to destroy all of it. We're talking legendary lost sectors, we're talking Nightfalls, easy peasy runs, and I have uploaded a similar build to this, but in this one, we're going to go in depth. We're going to see different weapon options, and we're going to swap some fragments to have way better boss DPS. Let's not waste any time and hop right into it. Let's start with our exotic, the Ambient Leap. Now, this one is pretty much what makes this build really good, but not only because it unleashes 3 waves instead of 1 from your class ability, which means you suspend more enemies. No, that's not the main reason, guys. A lot of people sleep on this, okay? If you take a look at this, it says Ranger's Lash spawns 2 additional projectiles, strikes targets more aggressively, and that is very cool, and travels farther. But here's the main point: gain woven mail when suspending targets. And this works no matter how you suspend targets. It doesn't have to be necessarily from this exotic. If you throw the grenade that suspends, it will also proc it. It gives you the ability to have your woven mail up 24/7, and that is amazing for your survivability. So that's gonna be our main starting point. And now let's get into the Berserker itself. Let's go over the aspects and fragments. Now, the very cool thing about Into the Fray is this: destroying a tangle or casting your super grants woven mail for nearby allies, which means that we're also going to be supporting our team with woven mail, therefore increasing their survivability, which makes day one raids and in-game content in general much easier. Now let's move on to the fragments. We're going to be using Thread of Mind. Defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. This literally just gives you your class ability extremely fast, and you really should be running this. And the second one is going to be Thread of Transmutation. While you have woven mail, weapon final blows create a tangle. And remember when I said that this aspect is really good for supporting your teammates and giving them more survivability with woven mail? Well, this is where that fragment comes in, because while you have woven mail, weapon final blows create a tangle. And since we have woven mail up at all times because of our boots and suspending enemies, this is just a perfect combination. Then we have Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy, which means that my grenade is gonna be there at all times, and that's perfect because we're gonna be using the shackle grenade to suspend enemies. And then finally, we're gonna be running Thread of Ascent. Activating your grenade ability reloads your equipped weapon and grants bonus airborne effectiveness and handling for a short duration. Now, the main reason I'm running this is gonna be for the boss DPS. If I'm running a rocket launcher, the new exotic glaive, and I don't want to waste time on my reload, I use up my heavy ammo, throw my grenade, that gives me an instant reload. Therefore, I do more DPS without any issues. But if you don't have that problem, you can use something else. For example, Thread of Isolation is amazing. Landing rapid precision hits amidst a severing burst from the target, and this means that they're going to be dealing less damage, which means that you and your team are going to be having more survivability. Now let's quickly go over our artifact, and we're going to take a look at a few mods here that take this build to the next level. The first one I want to talk about is going to be the Untangler. Destroying a tangle with a strand weapon suspends targets damaged by the explosion. So now, by destroying tangles with a strand weapon, we also suspend. This is very powerful, guys, okay? It's very strong, and especially when you combine it with Threaded Blast. Destroying a tangle with a strand weapon creates a larger and more damaging explosion. So think about it. You're dealing damage with the explosion, you're suspending everyone, which means you're getting woven mail, which means you're also supporting your teammates because you just destroyed a tangle. It's an overall beast of a build, and on top of that, you're going to be running Volatile Flow. Picking up an Orb of Power grants your void weapons volatile rounds, and this, if you're running any kind of fusion rifle, as I am, as you will see here in a second, makes it really good. So not only are you benefiting from your strand weapons, but your void weapons are also going to be buffed. Now the final mod is this one right here, and since the exotic glaive is so good right now, and in general, I also like to run swords, this is going to be very important because you're going to be able to deal with unstoppables if you're running the glaive and overloads if you're running the sword. But in general, guys, the crazy thing about this build is that even if you take that final mod that we just went over away, you don't have to worry about champions at all. And let me explain why. So we have suspend or unstoppable champions, which just literally makes them easy kills because you're just stunning them over and over and over. Then on top of that, since we're running winter Bite, we are able to slow overloads, which means that they are gonna get stunned, which is crazy. And finally, if we take a look at the barriers, once again we have to go back to suspend, which just makes barriers absolutely useless and super easy to kill. So overall, you have a build that covers all the champions. You have crazy survivability because of Woven Mail. You're supporting your teammates and you're just destroying waves of enemies in a matter of seconds. And don't forget that you pretty much have infinite abilities on top of everything. Now, there's a lot of weapons that we can use for this one. For me personally, I'm going to start off with an SMG in the kinetic slot. This is a pretty good one. I like Hatchling on it because it just gives me a little bit more damage every time I get a precision kill. Now, in the energy slot, I'm going to be using a fusion rifle. Most likely, it's going to be the Glacioclasm you see right here with a slide shot and reservoir burst, which means that I'm going to be able to just slide around like in Madman and have my magazine full so I can benefit from reservoir burst, which is just amazing in day one raids and endgame content in general, because in reality, all you want to do is deal as much damage as possible, especially to knights, wizards, everything like that. And finally, for the heavy, we're going to start off with Winter Bite. Easy reason, honestly, because it just deals so much damage. But let's say this one gets disabled. There's a lot of options that we can go with. You can use Two-Tailed Fox. Gjallarhorn is still going to be a good option. We have Anarchy right here. There's a bunch of swords, Crown Splitter or Razor's Edge. Obviously, if we need some precision damage, we also have Reed's Regret. There's also Sleeper that you can grab from your collection. Xenophage. There's many options for the heavy, so that's not something I'm really worried about at the moment. Now, for the mods, let's start with the class item. First one I want to talk about is Font of Restoration. Collecting an Orb of Power causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge. You gain bonus recovery while you have any armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. This will make your survivability much better, especially for my build, since right now I'm running only tier 6 recovery. As you guys can see, we have max resilience and discipline, which is perfect. But since our recovery is at tier 6, that will definitely help. And on top of that, we're going to be increasing the time of our armor charges with this mod right here. Your decaying armor charge has a longer duration, which is just perfect. Now let's move on to the exotic boots. We're going to be running Strand Weapon Surge and Stacks on Stacks. Your Strand weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have any armor charge, which is just going to make the kills on those ads easier. And then finally, we have Stacks on Stacks. Picking up an Orb of Power grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge. On the chest piece, we're going to be using Solar Damage Resistance. At the moment, that's what I'm running, but obviously, depending on the encounter, we can swap that around. That's not going to be an issue. Then we have Void Reserves, also something that you can move around depending on the encounter. And then finally, Charged Up increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1. So if you haven't yet, make sure to slap this on. Okay, let's move on to the gloves here. As you guys can see, I'm running Double Strand Loader. There is a few options, for example, Grenade Kickstart, but what a lot of people don't know is that if you're using these yellow mods, they pretty much mess up the other blue mods that I'm running, because these just consume all the armor stacks, and then my blue mods are pretty much useless. That's why I'm not going to be running this. And honestly, we have Thread of Generation, right? So we're not really worried about that grenade at the moment. Finally, on the helmet, we're going to be running Double Strand Siphon and a single Void Siphon. One thing is for sure, this build is going to be amazing for the day 1 raid, simply because of the suspend, Woven Mail, survivability, ad control as mentioned, and not only for the day 1 raid. This is an incredible build for legendary lost sectors, Nightfalls, any kind of endgame content just becomes so much easier. Just the simple fact that you don't have to worry about any of the champions, that speaks for itself. I really enjoy making these kind of more in-depth and technical videos about PvE and PvP builds, so I am going to be uploading more content like this. If you guys did enjoy the video, and only if you did, slap the like button, subscribe to the channel. As always, ladies and gentlemen, never forget to share that positive energy all around. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.
Let's go! Let's go, baby! Let's go!
I mean, we literally have the best community of all time. Oh! Oh, we got no scopes!